August 14, 1942. Dawn over Guadalcanal. The air hangs thick with the stench of rotting coconut and cordite. Rain hisses through the kunai grass as a ragged line of Japanese infantry, 2nd Division Ichiki Detachment, crawls forward through the mud of the Tenaru River mouth. Their stomachs are hollow drums. For 9 days they have eaten nothing but raw rice and the pulp of green papayas. Their uniforms are black with mold. Bayonets tremble on rifles that have not been cleaned since the march from Truk. Ahead, across the sandspit the Americans call Alligator Creek, a low murmur rises. Not the clatter of weapons, but something stranger. The metallic pop of tin cans being opened. Then the soft hiss of steam. The impossible fragrance of hot beef stew drifts across no man's land on the humid wind. This moment, unrecorded in any official war diary, would be spoken of in whispers for the rest of the Pacific Campaign. It was the first time many Imperial Japanese soldiers saw, with their own eyes, the material meaning of fighting the United States. By the summer of 1942, the Japanese military machine had sprinted across Asia and the Pacific in a blaze of victories that still dazzled the world. Hong Kong, Malaya, Singapore, the Dutch East Indies, the Philippines, each had fallen in weeks, sometimes days. Japanese propaganda spoke of a new order, of Asian liberation from white colonialism, of a divine wind that would sweep the oceans clean. Soldiers were told that the Americans were soft, decadent, divided by race and class, that their armies would collapse at the first shock of the samurai spirit. On Guadalcanal, the myth was about to be tested against a very different reality. The United States Marines who landed on August 7th came ashore with 17,000 men of the 1st Marine Division, but more importantly, they came with the industrial output of an entire continent. Behind every rifleman stood the assembly lines of Detroit, the canneries of California, the slaughterhouses of Chicago. While the Japanese soldier carried 90 rounds of ammunition and 7 days of rice, the Marine carried, in addition to his weapon, 2K ration breakfasts, 2 dinners, 1 supper, 10 packs of cigarettes, and a carton of matches sealed in wax. When the fighting grew heavy, the Marines did not tighten their belts, they opened another can. The C ration can itself becomes our recurring symbol. Olive drab steel, 10 ounces of corned beef hash or beans with frankfurters, heated in 30 seconds over a pinch of C4 explosive or simply held above a cigarette lighter. To the Japanese observer, it was more than food. It was proof of a society that could feed its frontline soldiers hot meals while simultaneously building 120 aircraft carriers. The can opener, the small folding P-38 issued to every Marine, became the quietest declaration of American abundance ever forged. On the night of August 20th, 21st, Colonel Kiyono Ichiki launched his first banzai charge against the Marine perimeter east of the Tenaru. 600 men rose screaming from the jungle, bayonets fixed, certain that one concentrated rush would shatter the Americans. They met barbed wire, machine gun fire, and 37mm canister rounds that turned the sandspit into a slaughter pen. When dawn came, the survivors crawled back through the grass and saw something that wounded them more deeply than bullets. Marines, unshaven, smoking cigarettes, calmly opening cans of scrambled eggs and ham, heating them on the hoods of jeeps while corpsmen bandaged their friends. A few Japanese soldiers, hidden in the undergrowth, watched for minutes that felt like hours. One of them, Sergeant Major Tetsuzo Shigeno of the 28th Infantry Regiment, later wrote in a diary recovered after the war, "We believed the Americans would be starving like us after 2 weeks in the jungle. Instead, they ate better than our officers in Rabaul. Their cans opened with a small key. Our rice was finished long ago. I understood then that this war would be decided by factories, not by spirit." Historical records bear out the scale of the disparity. In September 1942, the daily caloric intake for a Japanese soldier on Guadalcanal averaged 1,200 calories, often less. Malaria, beriberi, and dysentery were already widespread.
By contrast, the U.S. Navy's logistics reports show that between August and December, the Marines on Guadalcanal received an average of 4,800 calories per man per day, even during the worst periods of Japanese naval bombardment. The difference was not courage, it was canned peaches. As the campaign ground on, the sight of those cans became a psychological weapon more effective than artillery. Japanese night infiltrators, sent to cut Marine throats, sometimes froze at the edge of the perimeter, mesmerized by the glow of heat tablets under mess kits. Documents reveal increasing references to the Can Opener War. One intercepted order from the 17th Army headquarters in Rabaul, dated November 1942, warned commanders that morale was collapsing because soldiers see the enemy eating hot food while our men chew roots. Another report, classified most secret and signed by General Harukichi Hiyatake himself, admitted that the material superiority of the enemy has begun to affect the spiritual strength of our troops. The transformation was gradual but merciless. Men who had marched behind the rising sun, believing themselves invincible, began to measure victory in ounces of corned beef. Desertions, rare in the Imperial Army, began to appear. Some soldiers surrendered not because they were wounded, but because they could no longer bear the smell of American food drifting across the lines. In December 1942, a Japanese medical officer, Lieutenant Kijiro Minageshi, defected carrying a single Marine C-ration can in his haversack. He told interrogators he had kept it for weeks, opening and closing it, smelling the remnants of chicken stew, trying to understand how a nation could produce millions of such miracles while its own army starved. By January 1943, when the last organized Japanese units were evacuated from Cape Esperance, the lesson had been burned into the consciousness of an entire generation of Imperial soldiers. The divine wind had met the assembly line, and the assembly line never tired. The small steel can, no larger than a hand grenade, had become the quiet announcement that the Pacific War would not be won by Bushido, but by the boundless productivity of a free people. Years later, long after the Emperor's surrender broadcast crackled across the ruins of Tokyo, old men who had once charged the Tenaru with bayonets would still speak of those nights on Guadalcanal. They remembered the rain, the machine guns, the bodies in the surf, but most of all, they remembered the smell of hot food carried on the wind, the soft pop of a can opener in the dark, and the realization that some nations fight with steel and fire, while others fight with abundance, so vast it breaks the spirit long before the body falls. In the end, the C-ration can was more than nourishment. It was the sound of democracy made edible, proof that a society which could feed its sons in the midst of hell would never be hungry for victory. And somewhere on a forgotten sandspit in the Solomon Islands, beneath coconut palms now grown tall again, the ghosts of two armies still stand at opposite sides of a narrow creek. One side clutching empty rice sacks, the other turning a small key that opens the future.